As you have read, results in a scientific report can be presented in two ways, qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative means using words and sentences to describe the data of what has happened. So for example, you might describe the color of changing from a flower or from something that you have put dye into, or something that has changed the texture, for example, melting a ice cube in heat. Okay. A quantitative is using numbers and measurements to describe the data of what happened. So you will need to have a think of what does my experiment ask me to do and what kind of data will I be using. Is it qualitative data that I would use words and sentences to describe what has happened, or would I use quantitative data, which means using numbers or measurements to describe what has happened? So on the right-hand side, you will see an example that I have written. It is an example of a scientific report or an experiment that I have conducted using balloons and measuring the size of the balloons in its width. So the circumference, because it's a circle or a ball, okay? So as you can see and read through this scientific report up to procedure, it sounds quite like a procedural text. So we would start with the aim. What are we trying to aim for? What is our hypothesis? So what is our educated guess in terms of knowing about balloons and knowing about cold air? So as it is written here, it is hypothesized that the balloon at room temperature will stay the same, while the balloon that is cooled down would contract. Okay, so then I would list my materials. What would I need for it? And then I would write out the procedure step by step to make sure that it is explicit and concise. So when someone else picks up this experiment or this scientific report, they are able to copy the exact same experiment. Okay, then you would go down to the results. So through the procedure, I know that I had to write down the measurement of the balloon at the start and then wait 24 hours. And then I would measure the balloons again afterwards. So in my results, as you can see, there is a table because I am using measurements. So I thought about, would I use qualitative or would I use quantitative? Here I would use quantitative because, again, I am using measurements. So in the results section, I would draw up a table and I would have my title as balloon, starting size, finishing size, and the differences from start to finish. So the size decrease because I know a balloon will decrease. And then I would write down my two different balloons. So the balloon at room temperature and the balloon at refrigerated temperature. I write down their starting size and then I write down their finishing size from my measurements, which I have previously recorded. And then I look for the difference. So I know that the room temperature decreased in 4 centimeters and the refrigerated decreased in 9 centimeters. And this is one way of presenting your results. To conclude, of course, you will need to again think about, is my data something to do with numbers and measurement, or is my data about describing what has happened in a change of state, meaning changing of color or texture? So you will need to think about which set of data would I write my results in. Is it qualitative or is it quantitative?